Welcome to the Maverick Podcast. Hello to everyone. Hello to my fellow Mavericks. I'm your host, Kathy Rose, and I love to have this special time with all these independent and creative free spirit people. And speaking of that, we have one as a guest today. We have Frank Clifford, who is a fabulous astrologer in the UK and palmist and author of many, many books. And he's also a Maverick. So welcome, Frank. Come on board.
Hi there, Kathy. How you doing?
Hello, hello.
Hi.
So I've been very much looking forward to talking to you about this because I've seen your chart and I know your work and I experience you as a Maverick. But what I would like to do is to ask you what you think about the word Maverick. How would you define it and how does that fit for you?
Well, that's a good question because I found myself questioning this yesterday before we met, thinking about it, and I thought, am I a maverick? Because I don't feel like I'm particularly what I imagined. And then I looked up the word again to get a good proper dictionary definition, and then I thought, oh yes, that's me. That's fine. That's okay. I mean, I taught myself astrology, as a lot of people do, and never had a mentor, which is probably a good thing in some ways. Mm-hmm. And particularly in these days of Me Too and everything else, I never relied on that in a sense. And I think, let me think, Maverick. I don't do committees. I don't do anything that brings out the worst in people that would annoy me or upset me or be disappointed in people's egotistical behavior. All those things that can happen in spite of being an astrologer in a more enlightened field. You still get a lot of ego, you get a lot of politics at times. So I've avoided that. And I think when people say to me, how have you stayed in astrology and happily in astrology for 32 years? But I always say, because I've never joined a council or a committee. And that's my excuse, and that's my maverick reason, I think.
I 100% relate to that comment so dearly. I tried decision by committee once, and it didn't last very long. And boy, was I unhappy. And because that maverick energy is so individualized and so needs to work at their own speed, to do things their own way, and to act instantly. So you probably do a lot of get an idea, act instantly, and you don't overthink it. I would tend to believe that about you, right?
Well, I'm a Virgo moon, apart from being an Aries and a Sun Uranus. So I do plan it and I work through things, and detail is important, getting it right. Mm-hmm. I think what you being an Aries moon, me being an Aries sun, people don't always associate Aries with perfectionism. But for me, it's that idea of trying to strive for excellence, personal best, produce everything that I try and produce. I want it to be the best representation of who I am at that moment. I mean,
but that's very different than overthinking the decision to do it.
That's true. No, yeah. I'm very A to Z in that way. Make a decision. The only just finished doing a conference with Nadia Shah. We did a thing called Embracing the Community. And every year I do a student conference with Wendy Stacy. It's the only occasion where I actually have to write and ask somebody else's opinion, get somebody else's feedback. They both were pretty good at knowing that if I decided on something, it was going to be fine and work. But in terms of all the logistics, you have to remember that other people are invested too. Mm-hmm. And I've always run my life, and this is probably where the maverick bit comes in, but I've run my life as what I call a benevolent dictator. Mm-hmm. So I run my school that way. There's no committee, which again can be great. I mean, I get people's feedback and I get people's I'm always asking people what they need, what they would like, students, tutors, etc. But to have everyone have to decide on a committee and take 10 times as long, and half of them not be happy as well, because some people wanted one thing, it would be a nightmare. So that would be one of the reasons why I work for myself. As you say, make decisions quickly, but then once the decision's made, the Virgo moon comes in to try to strive for some semblance of perfection.
Well, I have a few notes here that I wrote down about Mavericks in general. And, there's that tendency to think outside the box. And of course, we could look at astrology and say, okay, that's the planet Uranus. But what I find, I've only done 4 of these episodes so far. Now I have Mavericks contacting me just out of the woodwork, which is the most fabulous thing. So I've been doing consultations for people all over the world who have the Maverick signature. And my God, it's just so incredibly refreshing, because I often refer to Mavericks as people who operate in a tribe of one, but there is this think outside the box, quite often refusing to play by the rules or challenging rules, preferring to take your own course of action to get results, and quite often not being afraid to bend the rules to make things happen. Questioning the rules, saying, why is it like this? Do I have to do this? In other words, Maverick people aren't automatically obedient.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That sounds interesting. Yes. Yeah. I try to play within the law and ethics always. That's my key. I don't think obviously you don't need to be outside of those to be a Maverick. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying break the law, but I mean rules that are imposed on you, like at a very early age. I said, I don't need to wear high heels. And at a fairly young age, before gray hair was fashionable, I went gray. It's like, I don't need to color my hair in order to feel good about myself. And, when I went gray, it was in my late 40s. I had this beautiful little hairdresser, little because she was petite is what I mean. She's Korean, she's gorgeous, she's very, very feminine. And she kept saying, oh, Kathy, you will look ugly. And it's like, oh, thank you. Now I have to do it. Because the rules were no, women should color their hair. So it's those kinds of things, challenging. Why are those rules there? And do I need to do them? Am I allowed to take my own path? Am I allowed to think outside the box? Certainly you've done that in astrology. You've trailblazed new ideas, new phrases, new ways to look at astrology. I love that about you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I see what you mean, particularly about the, I think that if you're a Maverick, if you're very Uranian, you're going to meet Saturn in your life all the time, every day. People say, don't cross the road at this point, don't do that, or I'm afraid to, or what would they think? And so I am surrounded, and I think this is what makes you more of a Maverick. I'm surrounded by family and some friends who have that fear in them, or worry, or what the neighbor think, and again, it's a reminder to the great freedom of being able to just not worry about other people's opinion, and that's never going to disappear 100%, of course, but it does. It's great to think, actually, what other people think of me is really none of my business.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's being true to self. But the other quality about many Mavericks is they really can think for themselves. They're not so affected by the hive mind, not so affected by groupthink. They can question when people who aren't so wired to Maverickism, and I'm not judging, we all have different purposes, and we all have different wiring and frequencies to which we are keyed. But the Maverickism would tend to automatically say, I'm going to think for myself and question this, rather than just kind of go along with it. Yeah. Which then leads me to astrology and, the overriding aspects or signatures that I'm seeing in horoscopes with people who will go, yes, I'm a Maverick. Yes, me. Yes, I agree. And there have been some people who have emailed and said, thank God you're talking about this, because I felt so alone. But it's Uranus Oriental, unaspected, aspecting Sun or Moon on an angle. equaling sun moon midpoint, not only Uranus, but that's the large signature. Yeah, and you can see that. Noel Till had Uranus equal sun moon. And in some ways, Noel was very much the Maverick. In other ways, he was not. He was a mixture of both. He was Capricorn, so he had particular standard rules in his Capricornism, but yet when he brought forward therapeutic modern astrology, he took a lot of arrows in those early years. When he brought forward some of his ideas about Saturn retrograde and other things, the normal approach to astrology reacted. So in that way, he was a Maverick. Yeah.
And I think the way that he taught, I wasn't taught by him, but I know people who were, that had the Saturn Capricorn structure, didn't it? So I guess he used the best of both worlds, but I imagine and still when his name comes up in more classical traditional areas, it's the criticism of him using Peregrine, quote unquote, incorrectly. But then again, the Maverick says, I'll take it and make it what it is for me, my experience, rather than argue for 50 years about who said what and where it originally came from. And that, the argument of this comes down to the idea of the word Maverick originally, and that's why I had to look it up yesterday, because the Uranian, a Maverick, won't want to be classified as anything anyway.
Exactly. So, yes.
When you said a Maverick, I'm thinking, hang on a minute, do I really want to be a Maverick here? Do I want to be classified as that? And it's not a rebellion. It's more like, is it going to limit how I'm seen?
Oh, yeah. Frank, that's beautiful, beautiful. And you're the only one that has said that. And I've been waiting in the back of my brain. Somebody's going to mention this, because it's how I feel too. I don't want to be classified or put in boxes, but yet we're astrologers. And what do astrologers do? Classify and put in boxes, categorize, organize data into 12 signs and all the planets. True. Isn't that fascinating?
It's true, but hopefully, and one of the things that I do very early on in my teaching to 101 students really is to say, you will bring your life experience to this class, and the way that you see the chart is going to be different from everybody else. So take what I'm teaching, but absorb everything you can, but contribute who you are, because I don't want mini me's. I don't want mini Franks going out there and teaching in my style. Yeah. And I know Noel had the Noel Till method Basil and other people use, and it was even printed on books at times. And that's not my thing. That's the Maverick responding to, I want you to get enthused and run with it in your own direction.
Yes.
Full stop. And come back and teach me. So that's what I want.
I agree totally with that. Yeah. But the Saturn component, is what wants to structure it and make it standardized and, bring it into form in that way. In fact, Noel, the next question I was going to ask you is about intuition, because you also use palmistry, and I think you do some with tarot, right?
No, not yet. We teach it at the school, but
oh, okay, that's what I was.
Yeah, I'm going to do it because I'm putting together a book based on the thing, but so I'm going to sit down and learn it over the next few months. But my big thing I want to learn, maybe being a Gemini rising helps, but my next, if I was going to learn a new subject, it would be graphology. I love handwriting. So that would be my next thing. I want to go away on holiday, quote unquote, on holiday. I often do a 4 to 5, 6 week thing to Australia and China and teach. I want to go somewhere and just absorb all my graphology books. That would be bliss.
Well, you're a visionary. You use vision, so what you see gives you information. So the handwriting and the style and the patterns would, that would speak to you. It would speak to me too. Somebody who uses psychic feeling a lot would not get as much from that. They would want to touch it. They would want to feel it. But that's awesome. That's awesome. But, you do use intuition a lot. I know you do. At least I assume you do. Now, you may not know how to define your own intuition, but I think that when you look at a horoscope, for example, when you're preparing for a client consultation, how long does it take you to prepare?
Usually the process is I'll print off a bi-wheel of the natal chart and the solar arc directions, my big thing, your big thing. And then I will hand draw the transits, with the planetary positions beyond those two wheels. I don't try wheels. And then I will make a list of both. And in doing so, I'll get a feel for the chart. So it may be about a 10-minute process. And I tend nowadays to have clients 3 or 4 a day, a couple of times a week, a few times a month, depending on the rest of my schedule. So when I have a client day, I'll prepare the day before, all 4 of them, get everything ready, but spend probably about at maximum 10 minutes just absorbing it. And when they come on a few minutes before we speak, I'll absorb it again. So, but in terms of intuition, I sort of, when you begin astrology, when you start learning and putting the pieces together and having the courage to look at somebody's chart, there are different stages, and then get paid for it, and then feel good and record it and present it and let people know what you're doing, all of those different stages. It's an interesting one, because when you do that, you want to get everything. You want to cover every part of the chart, of course, don't you? You want to tell them about every aspect, and most of the things just don't resonate, or they're just not that appropriate, or everything comes together in a different way. And I found that over the years, I've trusted that what I look at in any given moment and what I hear from the client will lead me to something that's going to be helpful.
Yes.
And when the client reveals something to me in consultation that is a big one. I had a client recently who one of the things she was talking about was that she discovered that her new husband had been sexually abusing her daughter, and she'd taken him to court and went through that whole procedure of getting him in prison. It was just horrendous thing for anybody to go through. As she's telling me this, I'm saying a little prayer in my head that whatever comes out of my mouth after this revelation and this sharing is going to be useful and helpful and insightful in a way. So often the intuition is simply a little prayer and a belief that where I'm starting, what I'm looking at, what I notice in the preparation and beyond is going to be the key stuff with whatever dialogue, whatever context I get. So the intuition, I think, is just trusting that what I say, regardless of what they tell me, what I say is going to be hopefully insightful and take them to a place that's useful and helpful.
And that's the role of the experienced astrologer, but also the confident astrologer, because when I teach, I talk to the students and say, each consultation is a jam. It's like when you see a musician who is in a jam band. In fact, the book that you put together, the Astrology of Music, and I wrote about my favorite band, which is Fish, and they're a jam band. And I wrote about that because my husband is a jam musician. He can sit down at the piano and instantly in that moment create music. And my son does the same thing. And my son is a jam band musician right now. He plays bass, and he's following Fish's footsteps. So I've observed jamming musicians, and it is a magical thing because you watch them and they suspend everything and they connect. They make a divine connection to the universe, and they just download, and they are so in the moment that they receive and play. But astrologers do the same thing in consultations when they're experienced, when they trust, and when it's a consultation and not a reading. Yes. Because it is a conversation, and with everything they say, you are guided to the next level, and you're jamming. You're jamming in astrology. You are in the moment. You are following the flow. You are connected. You are using the symbols on the chart to guide you where to go. But it's a very magical moment. And you described it well, trying to get a student to the place where they can relax into that, where they can stop the brain from doing the spin, the constant analysis, saying the little prayer, in a way, is what you're doing when you're releasing. You're saying, universe, please work through me. guide my next words. But that allows the jam to happen. It may sound very irreverent, but that's the process I go through. I spend 10 to 15 minutes preparing for a client consult also. And in the moment, then the client reveals where to go. You go there and you are supported and aided by the universe, by the divine intelligence, by the skills that you have. Yeah.
What students try to do at the beginning, and we've all done this, of course, is you try to impress, you try to show, you try to prove astrology, you try to do all sorts of things instead of listen. And we know as astrologers that clients come, they don't know their chart usually, they don't know much about astrology, although I get most of my clients these days are students or practitioners. I just seem to have a lot of them. So that's a lovely release to be able to show them what I'm looking at online and share with them and give them a different perspective. But most clients come to you, they've got no idea what you're looking at or how you're working it out. And yet they're the ones who've lived with that energy all their lives, and they're the ones that can teach us. So the idea of just forcing the chart onto somebody, and I say this in my books, I say this when I'm teaching, don't learn from, instead of saying, oh, well, you're a Virgo and you've got this, therefore you must be the X, Y, and Z in your life. You're only going to be applying what somebody else has taught you, what some book has taught you. Instead, look at the people you know well, learn from their mannerisms, their life experiences, their behaviors, their motivations, and then try to find it in the chart. And then you get surprised and you think, actually, I thought they'd be very Neptunian, but in fact, it's Pluto or it's Jupiter or whatever it may be. And so you learn, if you turn it the other way around, and you learn from biographies and from friends and family, you really get a sense of how that chart is being used and embodied, instead of just saying, okay, according to your chart, you should be the following. Nobody learns, nobody benefits that way, in my experience. You might as well get a chart printout telling you who you are and save your money.
Yeah, I consistently tell students, I am not here, or you are not, as an astrologer, there to describe personality to that person. We're there to be helpful and help them understand their life purpose issues and learn how they are living their chart, because nobody knows that in advance. One of my biggest complaints in astrology, especially in these days with social media and the ability to Google and to get little bits of information and then to think astrology, or even in the therapeutic modern approach, which can be misused, because then you can glance at a chart and go, oh, this person has depression because there's a Saturn influence here. They have depression. It's a diagnosis. It's a proclamation. And that is so ethically wrong in my mind, or spiritually wrong, to do that without engaging the person. I'm going to give a talk on anxiety signatures in the horoscope, because there are some signatures that can suggest the possibility of an anxious response in the person. There are patterns that suggest maybe that person is more wired to that anxious response. But I'm always cautious when I give that lecture, because I never want anybody to take that information and say, look at a chart and go, oh, you have anxiety. I think I would probably hunt them down and have a little talk with them if they did that. I think it's wrong on so many levels.
I like how you say hunt them down, but then just have a little talk with them rather than hunt them down and skin them alive.
Slap them. Well, I moderated that.
Exactly.
But I have found that I have a lot of spiritual clients who come in and really just want spiritual guidance. It's like, I don't need the future stuff. Don't tell me the future stuff. Just please help me learn how to be a more complete spiritual person, how I can get my thinking in line with creating my reality. So there's that dimension too. And, that's just lovely and wonderful, but that is a dimension of astrology. For example, you have Moon square Neptune in your natal chart. You're keyed to that frequency of Neptune. You have Sun, Venus opposite Uranus. You're keyed to the frequency of Uranus. You're keyed to both of those frequencies, the spiritual creative side, the Maverick original side, and the charming energy from Venus. sometimes just conveying that, are you using that planetary frequency in your life enough? Because it's obviously part of your life purpose to do so, because those are the strongest horoscope structures you have. Seeing those instantly within the first 5 seconds of looking at the chart. If you didn't do Sun Venus opposite Uranus, you wouldn't be fulfilling what you need to learn in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Need to be original, need to be somewhat maverick, need to not be on committees, need to do things your own way, need to be charming, need to be nice, need to be harmonious. You're not a Mars kind of in your face person. You're a Venus person. Anyway.
I mean, I'm a Mars Jupiter on the midheaven as well. So that I do get into people's faces just by, you see, when you are Mars on the midheaven, you get in people's faces simply by doing what you do.
But you do it with the terms of Venus.
Yes, that's right.
Totally different than doing Mars without Venus. Look at Donald Trump versus Barack Obama.
Absolutely.
Trump was Mars, Obama was Venus.
Yeah. I remember speaking up at UAC in 2018, 3 years ago now, and I was in a lecture, and a very bright young woman, I think maybe 30s, I'm not sure, was giving a lecture, and it was ended up being about, it was a traditional lecture. And I thought, I'm going to go because I'm always trying to find people that are reframing some of those old concepts. And there are people that do it very well, like Brian does it very well, Brian Clark, and Jason Holly does that, I think, very well. And I met Michael Barwick for the first time. And there are people that are finding ways to do it that I'm resonating with. But this one was, she began by saying she's got the worst, most debilitated Mercury. And I thought, well, that's interesting to state that or even believe it in the first place, full stop. And I'm talking as a Mercury in Pisces, which is fall and, it's got everything, hasn't it? The Mercury in Pisces.
And I have Mercury in Sagittarius.
And that's given all sorts of crap as well, isn't it?
Yes.
So she began with that. And I thought, well, I don't believe that, because I think she was a lawyer, very bright mind, very articulate. So I couldn't see anything wrong with that Mercury. But she said that. And then she went on in a way to prove that. And she said, you've either got Mars or Saturn in these two situations. So it's either fear and guilt or anger and frustration. And I put my hand up and I said, are there any other options for Mars or Saturn? And it's just one of those Emperor's got no clothes on moments where you just want to say, actually, is there anything else, And she got flushed and got embarrassed with the question, which surprised me again, because I thought she might have some remark about, well, this is how we see it and blah, blah, blah. But I was astonished that was the limitation.
Yeah.
And so I sort of believe that she's got a Mercury that's not functioning.
But you said it well. Are there any other options? Can we see this in another way? Now, one of my very dearest friends is named Dr. Marlene Schiel. She is a psychotherapist in Phoenix, and she is, in my mind, the most brilliant psychological mind I've ever come across. We used to teach Free Soul together. So we've known each other for 38 years. We've taught retreats together in seminars, and she has been my go-to mentor for bringing astrology in, or bringing psychology and psychological theory and techniques into astrology. So when I was studying idealism in astrology and how do you counsel somebody with idealism, I went to her. And so we speak all the time. But what you said to that person at UAC is exactly what she says to her clients when they come in and they're talking about their belief system, they're talking about their reality. She goes, can you see it a different way? Are there any other options? And she said, you ask somebody that, or she'll say, how's that working out for you? How's it working out for you? How's that belief working out for you? Because then it introduces the idea, are you willing to change it, reframe it? And again, it goes back to the self-fulfilling prophecy, because she will just tell them, if that's what you are telling yourself about your Mercury, you get to be right. and you do have choice, and that's okay. But, that statement, you get to be right about that, then gives them that choice, and it makes it very clear. The people who are high in Maverickism will tend to respond differently to that. Consistently, now that I've had this 2 or 3 month wave of all these really jazzed up Mavericks calling for consultation. And I tend to do consultations 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, so I'm full schedule, 3 to 4 people a day, 6 to 7 days a week, sometimes 5 a day. And when you hear the same message over and over and over with these patterns, and these Maverick people have been so refreshing to me, because they say, oh, I don't believe in any of that negativity. Just give me the waves of development and I'll do with it what I want. It's like, oh God, they're just talking to my heart. Highest level expression in my mind is, make a choice, put your will behind it, be independent, not be affected by what other people are telling you. Think for yourself.
And be the astrologer that you need to be as well. I remember watching Melanie Reinhardt very closely and hiring her to the LSAs years ago when I began, probably 17, 18 years ago, talking about the consultation process, what you do, what you don't do. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I can't do the following. And I can't, I felt limited by it, but I felt this is the boundary of ethics. And then I had a chat with somebody soon after. And she said, but you're Aries with Sun opposite Uranus, and you're there to wake people up. You're not there, and I'm not suggesting Melanie only does this, because obviously she does profound work with people. But what I learned from Melanie was, you don't give advice, you don't do this, and it almost felt like to do a consultation, I'd have to almost bind and gag myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, in fact, it wasn't about giving advice, it's about giving options, suggesting perspectives, challenging what they've said, or making connections. And this other friend of mine said, you're not doing that type of counseling astrology in that way of just sit here week in, week out, let's listen and work out. You're there maybe for single session astrology.
Exactly.
Noel did.
And especially with the Aries dynamic, planting a seed and being a catalyst.
That's right.
I always perceive the particular Aries dynamic as the jumper cables in a car that provide the spark to get the battery going, being the catalytic energy and planting the seed. It is so fabulous to talk to you and hear your heart. And, I feel like your website, we should mention your website.
Which one?
Oh, you have many. Well, we should mention all the books. You have what, 25, 30 books?
I published 25, 30 books.
Yeah.
Booklets as well, some of them.
And booklets.
I did a solar arc directions booklet originally, because it was a bit of a Maverick response to Noel's 600-page tome or whatever it was. Because I looked through it and thought, can I say what I need to say in 32 pages?
I applaud you.
And the funny thing was, the irony was, I sent it to Noel because I do quote him in there. So I mentioned him a few times. He was very pleased. Wrote me back, said, but where, young man, where are the page numbers? And that was the main comment. And that's the irony, because it was deliberately done in a booklet that didn't need page numbers. It was 32 pages or whatever. And that's what he wanted to know. Where are the pages? Right. So that made me laugh. And then, so yes, you asking about books. Yes, published. I love publishing the mini books. They give me a chance to just get to the point, get people running with the ideas, doing their own thing. I don't want to create a 1,000-page tome, because I think you can get to the point in an Aries way, earlier, quicker, and leave them to do the rest. So londonschoolofastrology.com is the main school website. I've got frankclifford.co.uk, which is, the funny thing is, on there is a complete list of I think it's a complete list of all the things I've done over the years. And I deliberately keep that up to date, because I never remember what I've done. So I think when people say, do you have a new biography? I think I have to go back to this page and start reading what I've done. Because I've always been active and working, and I've never had a real job. I've been an astrologer from day one. So I joke with people about that. So they're the two main websites. So that one is really more some articles and where to find me. And the other one is the teaching.
Actively teaching through the London School of Astrology. All people have to do is Google your name and they can find out all about this. And I thank you so much for coming on and having this chat and showing your Maverick side and your high consciousness in astrology and all of the service you do. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, well, thank you for asking me, and it's good on you for addressing that. I think people think they're Mavericks. It's a bit like if you have to tell somebody you're a Maverick,
then you aren't.
It's a bit like telling people you're spiritual. Right. I'm on a spiritual journey. Okay. I'll see you next year.
You could just wear a great big old crystal too. No.
Yes. And good luck. It's almost like they have to prove it to you. Yeah. And I think the Mavericks, it's like busy people. It's people who are doing, the people that know how to do stuff are doing it for themselves, and they're busy doing it. And you just need to look around our field to the people who are happily engaged in the things they love. They're the busy ones. They're usually the Mavericks that are not waiting for committees to decide to turn a horse into a camel. A camel is a horse designed by committee, something like that. So I love the independence of it. I like being my own person as well. That feels reassuring, and it feels like there's no bullshit as well. I was at a talk recently on something, and it was a bad talk, I have to say, in my opinion. It was just a bit of a cringe-worthy talk, and the woman came up to me afterwards, this is before lockdown, and said, "What did you think?" And for years I've tried to negotiate my Gemini ascendant, not into telling people, or my Sun Venus, not into telling people what they might need to hear or to be liked, and I've tried to always present the truth, or my version of it, my perspective. And I thought, please don't ask me. That's too much pressure, to think of something in the moment to say, that rather than saying what I wanted to say, which was, I didn't like it. It was awful. It was, and just my opinion. And so she said, "What do you think of it?" And I said, "Well, more importantly,
what did you?"
And I thought, wow, that's Sun Venus at work, even in Aries, being able to turn that around, because I thought, please don't ask me.
Well, it's also a testimony to your kindness and to the fact that you have a heart. No, I'm serious. It's charming, but it was also reflective, but it's nice. The Sun Venus people, they're nice people. Pleasant people, usually.
Moon Neptune helps as well, because I think this is. But the part of me wants to say, this is what I think you need to do. I'm doing a course next year, 2022, on teaching astrologers to teach and present.
Yes,
because I really want to do that. Again, it's not, my way is not the only way. I'm not setting myself up as the person who knows everything, of course, but it's so valuable what I've learned over the years, I think, from different people doing it right, doing it in ways that I think sabotage themselves. That's one of the key things I'm doing next year. And I've just been putting it off for a while, but it's one of those things that I not only want to find the next generation so I can go off and sit on the beach and read about graphology, but also I want to share that. I want to learn from the experience too of teaching it. So
beautiful.
Part of me wants to say to people, "Oh, don't do that," or "That was terrible," or and then the other part of me thinks, "How do I turn it around and just avoid that
and be kind and reflective?" Well, thank you so much, and I hope I see you next year at ESAR in August of 2022 in Denver.
If they let me in, I mean the country rather than the
right, not ESAR, but the country. Yes, if the pandemic calms down and we get to actually meet in person. Yes,
it'll be nice. We met at UAC, of course, at your stall and your beautiful what are they called?
Mandalas.
Mandalas,
Yeah.
that's the word.
Yeah.
Yes, beautiful thing. So that was
Yeah. Well, bless you. And thank you very much. And till next time, right?
hey, lovely. You take care, Kathy.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.